Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everyone. A lot of us are struggling with anxiety. I have to tell you, and 90% of the people I know have some degree, the majority of them, pretty heavy degree of anxiety nowadays. We've talked about that previously with this gentleman. Today, we're going to talk about anxiety sobriety with him and what that means and how it looks. He is a mental health counselor. He's created a great organization called Healthy Counseling Center, and Dr. Ray Smith is back with us. Welcome back, Ray. How are you?
Well, fine. Thank you for having me, Steve. I feel very good, and I'm excited about opening the phone lines and getting to talk to some of the listeners. I think that some of the questions about that maybe 90% that you were talking about that are anxious, am I just being foolish? Should I not be able to pull myself up by my bootstraps? There's probably some questions that anyone who dares to stick their neck out there a little bit and ask a question, they're probably asking the same question that millions of others just don't have the nerve to ask. So we're going to appreciate them.
Absolutely. If you want to reach us two different ways, you can call us. Phone number is 631-319-6275, or you can reach us instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. Maybe if you don't want to talk, you can certainly email us and get your question answered. So, Ray, when we talk about anxiety sobriety, what exactly is that?
Anxiety sobriety is the idea that just as you can quit doing alcohol, drugs, gambling, porn, you can have a state of freedom from the temptations to use those things to numb or change how you feel on the inside. Anxiety sobriety means that you are calm and peaceful, you're courageous to face what's coming, and you don't have that heart beating of panic, and you don't have those sleepless nights worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow. It means that you're able to function in the way that you were meant to. When we were kids, we weren't anxious. That's something we developed over time. Anxiety was a way that we dealt with things that were very unpleasant. And some of the most horrible parts of anxiety, working with a lady who has 28 different alters. And she started becoming more people when she was a preschooler, and she was being incested, and then she was being pimped out to other perverts by her father. Well, it's amazing that a child could come up with a way to cope with that kind of situation. But now to be done with it, she doesn't need them anymore. Now to let go of those alters and have anxiety sobriety, to have peace. There's no temptation anymore. She feels confident and she can deal with things as an adult. So anxiety sobriety is the destination of my book, Anxiety Quest, which if you go to drraysmith.com, Anxiety Quest will be the first thing that you see there, and how to find it on Amazon. And then we are doing now the workbook, Anxiety Quest, that goes a little bit deeper so that there's questions. It's slippery too.
It's a hot publication.
Right,
hard to hold it.
But there are questions and then places for people to dive in a little bit deeper than just listening to the audiobook or reading through the paperback. It is a way to go down deeper. Oh boy, what else is going on in there that I would feel anxious? So anyway, the books are my best effort to spread the word out there. Not everybody wants to come and talk about anxiety as if it's a pathology, and not everybody wants coaching because this is where I am and this is where I want to go. Some people still want to do it on their own, and we want to help them do it.
Wow. You mentioned before that we develop anxiety. What age does it typically take place? Let's say you're, a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, you're afraid to go to school, maybe separation anxiety, if you will.
Yes.
Is that true anxiety when you're that little?
It is, because you are afraid of something that actually can't hurt you. If you're hiding behind mom's skirt because there's a stranger there, the stranger's not there with a knife or a gun. So the social anxiety, the separation anxiety that comes from a little child is true anxiety. We're born with one. We're all born anxious about falling. I don't know why that is, and probably one day when we know more about brain chemistry, we'll be able to figure that out.
Wow.
But the others develop heredity and environment. If mom is afraid of going into a big store, the preschooler will be too. If dad is afraid to be out in the car driving on the freeway, probably the young child will be too. And there's a lot of ways to prevent that. You know, the moms and dads that read to their kids at night the Mother Goose stories and Grimm's fairy tales and those things, and you're reading books and rubbing backs and saying prayers and making bedtime hygiene a real relaxing thing, those kids don't get as anxious as early in life.
Wow. So if a parent has a lot of anxiety, does that translate to the child? So that's my first question. My second, if the child has anxiety, and of course, when they grow up, they have anxiety, is it genetics connected, or can it just be that the parent had a lot of anxiety, and that's how the child got it?
Well, both. Yes, a child can get anxiety from the parents. They're always running their radar and trying to pick up signals. And if mom's afraid of bugs, they're going to be afraid of bugs too.
Sure. Wow.
And later in life, when kids are anxious, it may not be the parent's fault, but it is the parent's response ability, the ability to respond to the child so that they can get through their anxiety quest and get to a place of anxiety sobriety, even if it's beyond what mom and dad have accomplished on their own.
I got to tell you, most of the people I know that have anxiety, their parents or parent has it or had it. And sometimes it's almost everybody in the family. I know one in particular, they all have anxiety. Pretty substantial too, I might add.
Yes. Yeah. And that's heartbreaking to hear. It's certainly heartbreaking for each generation to come up with that. And that's why something like Anxiety Quest, a guided journey to get you to anxiety sobriety, is so important. Because just because those things have happened, heredity and environment, doesn't mean that you're locked into that for the rest of your life. Or grandma was a worrywart, so my grandchildren will be too. No, that can stop in this generation.
Wow. Yeah. And it to me, when we talk about anxiety, it seems to be much more well accepted. Like if we talked about it 10 years ago, you might be looked at like, you're a little odd over there, you have anxiety. Now it seems to be more of a common thing that people are okay admitting it. Maybe they take meds, they go to therapy, whatever it might be. But certainly Anxiety Quest, what you offer is something, a workbook to work you through it, which I've never even heard of. Yeah.
Well, the anxiety that is life altering, let's say someone who has agoraphobia and can't even get out of bed, they have suffering in ways that we can't even imagine. You wouldn't want that to go on to the next generation. The survey I heard last was that 28% of the country, adults, are in counseling. And of those, the majority are in because of anxiety.
Wow.
We hear about mood disorders like anxiety, and it's in the limbic system. There's not enough norepinephrine or dopamine or serotonin or something. And for a mood disorder, heads, you're anxious, tails, you're depressed. It's two sides of the same thing. And they can be interreacted causally, because if I feel helpless and I feel hopeless of getting any better, then I'm going to have anxiety that makes me even worse. Or if I have some feelings of worry and then I feel helpless or hopeless to overcome them, then my anxiety is going to lead me to have more depression. They're tied together.
We have a question before we get to that while we're on this topic. Can you I often hear you start with anxiety leads to depression. anxiety, depression. Can it work the other way around? Can you be depressed and then it turns into anxiety, or it just festers?
Yes,
Ah,
because if you are depressed, you're going to worry about whether it will get better, whether these pills will work, what other people will think. You mentioned the stigma a minute ago. I think there's still more stigma against depression than there is anxiety.
yes.
But when you seem foolish to others because you have a phobia, they might ridicule you, judge you, and so that might be another reason for people to isolate so that they don't get that. And isolation is one of the criteria for depression.
Depression. Right. Wow. Kelly from Portland, Maine checks in, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. She says, I recently got divorced. I'm trying to navigate being alone. It's a bit of a fear and a challenge. Would that also be considered anxiety?
Yes, probably so. Because can I make it? Do I have what I need to be an independent person? I don't have somebody to hand the football off to the fullback to run with me. I've got to do this alone. And so all those anxiety fears, am I inadequate? Did I get rejected because I'm not good enough? Am I not really good enough? What do I need to do to be good enough? What if I'm never good enough and nobody ever chooses me for a life partner? Well, as a matter of fact, I don't choose me either. I'm not very happy with me. So, yes, it could. The strange thing, sometimes anxiety doesn't get up to a clinical level. There could be just after this divorce and move, there could just be that unpleasantness. I don't have my village anymore. I don't have that community of support
Sure.
underneath as a safety net.
Yep.
So in this new place, who do I talk to? Who is safe? Who would keep my secret? Who wouldn't make fun of me if I said post-divorce is the pits? Well, most everybody who's been divorced would say, yeah, it's not all roses. It may be a solution, but it's a solution with some of its problems coming along with it. So to I don't know if I told you this study. They had a new brain machine a few years ago, and people who had been in trauma or a big change like a divorce, their mind could ask as many as 10 times a second, am I safe? Well, after you've been divorced, after you've been moved, am I safe? Is this safe place going to be safe? Did I make the right decision? Is this going to be okay? If that's happening 10 times a second, we can't even talk that fast. We only talk at 125 words a minute. So to have that foreboding over her the whole time that she's moved and getting divorced, it's a big change. And we'd expect it to be a difficult change because it's not just the loss of the spouse, it's the loss of that community and
Sure.
all the support that she had there.
And your stability.
Yeah.
It could be decades of building a life. And now that stability is gone, that foundation is gone. So you said something very impactful a moment ago in regard to Kelly's message, in that I'm not good enough. And it's my understanding that that is one of the number one things that we wrestle with, whether we're good enough. So I
Yes.
guess it does introduce a, interesting dynamic when you get divorced, because you wonder, how did this happen? I wasn't good enough. And then you're looking for the next person to come along. They haven't come along yet. Why not? Maybe I'm not good enough.
Well, and if you are taking that personally, I'm a reject. If you don't take it personally, oh, he was rejecting. It makes a big difference in how you recover. If he wanted somebody that would tolerate infidelities and have an open marriage, and Kelly wouldn't, then okay, it's not that she isn't good enough, it's what she wants and what he wants have a conflict. There's lots of other reasons for divorce.
Sure.
Let me take a little sidebar on that for a minute. Most of the time, if you do exit interviews from divorce court, people will say we fought over money or fought over parenting or the in-laws or whatever. That's all a lie. Everybody fights over the same thing. They want to get their way. And I don't know what Kelly wanted versus what her husband wanted, but sometime if you boiled it down, it's who got their way. And if she didn't get her way, or if he didn't get his way, so he took his marbles home, that happens. But how to interpret it is kind of sophisticated, because if what I wanted for my way was that we save more money, and if he wanted his way to spend more money on cocaine, we do have a conflict over money, but it's actually about who gets their way with the way we spend or use or invest the money.
Interesting.
Sidebar on divorce, but when she's coming away from this in a down mood, she needs to be aware that it's not all her fault, or she didn't become unworthy of love one day.
Interesting what you said about divorce. That it's who wants to win, who wants to walk out the winner in getting their way. And of course, there's financial things involved in that. Never thought of it that way. Never heard that. And that's based on research or a poll, I guess.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And a lot of times, if we just took turns, maybe not with cocaine, but if you want to go on vacation to the mountains and your wife wants to go to vacation at the seashore, well, could we go to California where there's mountains and a seashore? Or could this year we go to Florida and next year we go to Colorado? There's lots of ways to resolve conflict besides all or nothing, my way or the highway.
Yeah. At least like they say, the attorneys win.
Yeah.
Either way. Casey checks in from Smithtown, Florida, says, what are your thoughts on anxiety medication?
Same as my thoughts about this prescription. This helps me to read, and I'm okay with it. Some of the anxiety medications, like the benzodiazepines, are not only addictive, but over time you build up a tolerance for them. And unfortunately, they make for cognitive or brain dysfunction. So the more you take those medications, the dumber you get over time. So when do you need a medication, and when are there other ways of looking at things? Well, the reason for Anxiety Quest is if you can do this without medication, you'll be better off. If you can't start, or you can't get out of bed, or you can't even imagine feeling better, you may need a baseline medication to help your brain have the right chemicals in it, so that what's coming through on the antenna that lead to the brain can be filtered through and be healthy. If there's a chemical missing, serotonin's the big one. If there's a chemical that your body's not making, then if you have to take it supplementally through a pill, good, because then you can use what serotonin means. In the limbic system of the brain, the cells don't touch. And so there is a juice in there, because the messages come in electrically, but they have to pass through the juice to get to the other side. So what anti-anxiety pills do is clean up that juice so the right messages get through. If I don't have enough medication on board and I see a spider, the message might land over here that, oh boy, this is catastrophic and terrible. If I have the right medication on board, oh, there's a spider. I think I'll just release him outside and let him have another chance at life. It depends on what's going on with that juice. If you need medication, you get it, because there's a stigma to taking those meds too.
Yeah. You bring up a fantastic analogy in your glasses. The glasses help you see. They're prescription glasses. They're not fixing your eyes. So the anxiety medication isn't fixing the problem. It's helping you cope, see through life, more clarity, and mentally, I would
exactly
assume. But if you wanted to cure the anxiety, best way I can describe it, what's going to do that?
That's the hope for Anxiety Quest, that you would journey toward anxiety sobriety. You might need a chemical for a while to help you get there, and you might not. Anxiety comes from the way that we think about things. Anxiety doesn't come from spiders or from getting divorced. Anxiety comes from the way that we think. And if I think spiders could give me a fatal bite, I might feel more anxious and I might want to kill the spider or run away or have some other behavior. But it starts with that stinking thinking that this could be a problem. And I'm afraid of problems. I'm afraid I can't solve problems. I'm afraid I'm inadequate to deal with spiders or whatever. Then I get to feeling more anxious. And then how I behave is affected. How I think, how I feel, how I behave are all part of a reaction to an anxious thought, not necessarily a situation.
Would you
There
say,
probably, let me go back to Kelly for just a second. There
sure,
are probably people that got divorced that same day who, instead of, oh boy, I don't know if I can make it or not, to free at last, finally I get to have a different life. It's the same event. It's a divorce, but how they look at it, one, oh, I'm free. The other, I don't know if I can do this.
yeah. And do you think
Same
it, if you keep tracing it back, does all of this, what triggers the anxiety, maybe even the spiders, does that go back to our childhood ultimately?
most of the time, because most of the time somebody has told us this is the way we do spider management, or someone has told us look both ways before we cross the street. And so to be a little anxious when we come up to the corner can be life-saving for kids.
Sure.
And even divorce. You hear people that what is it? There's no good men over 40, or all the good men are married or gay or something. And
Right.
that stinking thinking could lead anybody who is headed for divorce to be very afraid of whether or not they're going to have a successful outcome. Same thing with medication. You might have to try 3 or 4 meds before you got the right one. And if
Mm.
you're already anxious, then will this work? What if it doesn't work? What if this is the last one they've got? What if I never am able to, and all those what if questions are proof that anxiety is present.
And I can even imagine too, if your parents got divorced when you were very young, maybe one parent left, just left. You might be wrestling with that, being alone. Then
Well,
you get divorced.
fear of rejection, fear of abandonment.
Right. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Got somebody on the line. Hey, can you hear us?
Hey, I can hear you.
Oh, great. What's your name?
My name is Dustin.
Justin is checking in from Boston. We've got Dr. Ray here. You have a question?
Yeah, so I just started this new job and I have a lot of social anxiety and this job is kind of important to me. I was just wondering if you could help me with ways of overcoming this kind of awkward social anxiety at my new job, just because I don't want it to affect me in the long run.
No, you want to go in there and look cool, calm, collected, like they're glad that they got you on the payroll. Well, it goes back to your thinking again, Justin, that if I'm afraid of the other people there, or I'm afraid of what they're thinking about me, or I wonder if I'm good enough, who are you thinking about? It sounds like you're thinking about yourself.
Sure.
And if you go in there and you think, what do they need? Why'd they hire me? How could I help them? I wonder if the other people are uncomfortable with the new guy being there. I wonder if I could help them with their social anxiety or any discomfort they have meeting and greeting another person. Because the big strategy you're going to look for is how to quit thinking about me and whether I'm welcome there or something, and put your focus on those other people. Because if you can, I'm going to be a blessing to these guys. Well, be one. How can I help? Let's get acquainted. You want to have coffee break today? You want to go to lunch today? I want to get acquainted with them and see how I can serve them. There's a reason that your company hired you. Let's find out what
So
that
just
is.
kind of put myself out there more.
Well, and put the focus on other people more.
It's funny
So-
we're saying this. I have a friend today started a recent new job. Today's the holiday party in the office, and she was just furious. Like, oh, man, I don't know these people. I don't think I want to get to know them. I just want to do my job. I said, but it is what it is. Go in there and think, maybe I'm going to meet somebody new. Have a slice of cake or, whatever, a tray of ziti, and just make the best of it, smile, and see where it takes you. But by the way, she has anxiety. She has a lot of anxiety.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that she's got that much anxiety, but Justin, it sounds like the same kind of social anxiety. And I would tell her to go to the party and scan around. Who's standing in the corner? Who's alone? Who looks more scared than you are? What could you do to go over there and help that person have a wonderful time at the Christmas party? Or those colleagues of yours that you don't want to reject you or dislike you, Justin. So how can I find out about them? How can I show my interest in them? And even how can I be of support to them? Because I could come alongside. Maybe the old guy that had this job was not so easy to deal with. Well, I want to come alongside as somebody who gives a rip about what's going on. I forget the guy who was the first president of the UN, but he used to go around every day. They had 900 employees, and he would speak to each one of them individually. And he would remember which one had a child having a birthday or which one is having a grief from a death of a parent. And he would go around and just make a small talk with each of them. Guess he wasn't socially anxious, or if he did feel social anxiety, he put the focus on the person that he was going to go talk to. And I hope he didn't do it out of manipulation, but the story is all 900 of those people would do anything they could for the new president. So yeah, he was the new guy, but he came around and he became somebody who was alongside them in the journey. So I don't think you probably have time to talk to 900 people every day, Justin, but you could at least get around that are on your team, and you could pay attention to people who seem more uncomfortable or more shy or avoidant than what you are, and what could a smile and a handshake and an introduction do for them? Keep your focus.
Thank you so much. That's a really approachable strategy. I'm not gonna lie. I haven't even thought of that. You know what I mean? Because I've just been so worried and like kind of huddled in my own shell. I really haven't paid notice to anybody else. You know. So.
Well, thank you so much for calling, Justin, and all the best to you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That really helped me a lot.
You're welcome.
We're out of time. So Anxiety Quest is the workbook. How do we get that? How do we find you, right?
Well, the easiest way is go to drraysmith.com, and there are the Anxiety Quest books, and that's where the Anxiety Quest workbook is going to be. The good news is if you've got a Kindle subscription, or you've got the Amazon Prime where you can get ebooks or audiobooks, you don't have to pay for these. And there's a way to start listening to either of them right there at the website, drraysmith.com. And if you want coaching, or you want counseling, or you want some other things than a question on the radio show, well, then let me know through that means, and I'll get back with you. The struggle that people have with anxiety just tears your heart. It's something that you can say is needless, because if you get to the point of anxiety sobriety, I didn't need to worry about the new people at work. I didn't need to worry about the Christmas party. It's not easy to let go of all those fears and anxious thoughts, but it is possible. There are people who have done it. If they can make the path and get from where they are with anxiety to anxiety sobriety, then the rest of us can too.
Here's to that sobriety. Ray, thank you so much. A lot of good stuff today, and thank you for coming up with the workbook, Anxiety Quest. It's what we need.
Well, I want it to help. Not everybody can get in for coaching, so let's put the books out there for the people who can use those.
Awesome. Thank you very much for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.